Welcome to today's Bright Ideas webinar. This is part one of our assessment mini-series on creating assignments and discussions in Brightspace. We're excited to have you join us today. A couple of things to note before we get started. The Zoom Q&A box is open for any questions that you may have throughout today's session. A recording of this session and the slide deck will be posted in Brightspace community once we are finished. And we'll also post any of the Q&As that were received with links to any additional resources that might be helpful. So let's get started with today's agenda. We'll start with some quick introductions, and from there we'll talk about the why behind two of our assessment tools in Brightspace, assignments and discussions. Then there will be a demonstration where I will show you how you can actually create an assignment and a discussion in Brightspace. And you can follow along in your own Brightspace environment if you'd like. And to finish off, we'd love to hear about how you are using these tools and what you've taken away from today's session. So we have some discussion questions and some time for questions from you at the end. So a little bit about us. My name is Renata and I'm an adoption specialist at D2L. And I am joined by my colleague Heather as well, who will be helping to answer questions that you have in the chat. So let's start by clarifying a few terms before we get too far. So you've likely heard of D2L or Brightspace before, but just to clarify, D2L is the company, Brightspace is the product, which is our learning management system. Depending on where you work, your institution or organization may call Brightspace by a different name. And finally, we have our Brightspace community, which is our hub of resources where you can connect with other Brightspace users, seek out additional information on using Brightspace. And we have a number of different groups in the community as well, including the higher education faculty group, where we share events and articles relevant to using Brightspace to teach higher education. So thanks, Heather, for putting that link in the chat for us. All right, so today's session is all about creating assessments in Brightspace. So we're going to be looking at our two of our core assessment tools, assignments and discussions. Our session next month will be focused on the quiz tool. So be sure to join us next month if you're interested in learning more about quizzes. So in this session, our learning objectives, you're going to learn how to create an assignment and a discussion. And you'll notice here that our teams have been really focused on creating a consistent user experience across our assessment tools when it comes to the creation and evaluation process. So once you learn one tool, those same intuitive workflows transfer over to the next tool, making it very familiar and easy to learn. So just a bit of an overview of some of the reasons why we see instructors using the assignments tool. So for starters, you can have all of your assignments in one place. So whether it's an assignment that's being submitted online or a presentation taking place in person, you can house all your assignments and student submissions in one spot. In your assignment, you can actually attach any files that are relevant, such as from your Google Drive or OneDrive. You can embed additional resources or links within your assignment description, or you can even use a video note to explain your assignment to your learners. You can also attach a rubric right into your assignment to let learners know how they'll be evaluated. There are also lots of really rich feedback options within the assignments tool. You can use annotation tools or even video note again to offer feedback to your learners. We also just recently introduced the ability to provide feedback in bulk within the assignments and discussions tool and retract that feedback as well. We'll be covering those feedback tools in our part 3, so be sure to join us for that session if you're interested. And then you can also align standards or outcomes to your assignments and then assess them using a course-specific achievement scale against those standards. And finally, that differentiation and personalization piece, which is so important. You can use tools like special access and release conditions to differentiate your assignments and meet the needs of various learners in your course. So let's take a look. All right, so I am logged in as Regina Davis, the instructor in this Intro to Business course. And I have the assignments tool on my navigation bar here. If you don't, you can always access your assignments tool and all the tools in your course in Course Admin. So I'll just go there to show you. And I'm going to find my assignments tool under my assessments area. So here I can see a list of all the different assignments already created in my course listed in our blue font here. So I've got financing a business, I've got this intro to startup funding, an assignment proposal, oral presentation, And you'll notice that I can also organize my assignments into categories. So I have a couple of categories here. I've got this final assignment category and this group work category as well. I can also choose to not have assignments in categories as well. If you wanted to add a category, you can click on this Edit Categories option and then add a category, and you'll be able to add a category to organize your assignments. You can also select all your assignments, and you can select this bulk edit to easily change assignment categories and availability dates really quickly instead of actually having to go inside of each assignment one by one. So I find that's a really handy trick there. Let's take a look at the symbols beside each of the assignments so that we can get an idea of what those are. So if we hover over here, we can see that this little key here means that special access has been granted. So this means that one or more learners have a different due date for this assignment, or this assignment could be available only to a select group of users in your course. So special access helps us to differentiate for the different learners' needs in the class. This icon here, this little ribbon here, means a grade item is attached to the assignment. So that means that this assignment has been added to the Brightspace gradebook, and any marks provided will feed directly into the gradebook. This icon that has an I with it crossed out means that this assignment is not visible yet to the learners. And then the final icon I want to point out is this one here that says has release conditions. So this means that the learner has to meet a certain criterion that has been set by the instructor in order to see the assignment. So for example, they might have to visit a particular content topic, contribute to a discussion topic first, or receive a certain grade on another assessment. So release conditions allow instructors to customize the learning experience for students and decide what information they receive and when they receive it. The drop-down beside each assignment gives us some more options. So if we click on the assignment, we can edit it, and we can jump into that editing experience. We can make it visible in this case, but if it was visible, we could choose to hide it from here. We can choose to exempt a learner from this specific assignment. We could delete it. We could copy the assignment. So if you had a very similar assignment that you wanted to not start from scratch from, you can make a copy of it. And then this copy to other courses feature is also really handy. So if you were teaching multiple courses and you wanted to push over this assignment to a different course, you can do that from here. And then on the right-hand side, just a quick snapshot of any new submissions that you might have will show up in this folder. And then you can see how many learners have completed, how many learners you have evaluated for that assignment, and then if feedback has been published to those learners. So to create a brand new assignment, you would select this new assignment option. I've already started an assignment here, so I'm actually going to jump into this intro to startup funding, and we're going to go in and actually edit it out. So I'm going to click on the drop down and select edit assignment to open my editing experience here. All right, so first thing is I have my assignment title here at the top. And the next thing I want to point out is the ability to add in learning outcomes to your assignment. So align this assignment with learning outcomes in your course. Now, I do want to call out that this term here that says outcomes is configurable. So in your course, it might say expectations, it might say standards. The term for learning outcomes is controlled by a configuration variable. So this is controlled by your Brightspace administrator, and it's been suited to set the language of your institution. So this might look different than yours. If you want to align your assignment to learning outcomes, first you need to import these standards or learning outcomes into your course. And once you've done that, you will see this option, outcomes, standards, or whatever it's configured in your environment. And then when you select it, you will see all of the outcomes that have been added into the course. And then you can select which ones that you'd like to align to this assignment. I could also use this search bar to search for an outcome in my course if I had a lot to choose from. I do just want to call out that this is a demonstration environment, and so some of the aspects of this course will look different than your course. So for example, if you're wondering about this blue icon here, this is part of our D2L Lumi package. So what you're seeing here is D2L Lumi outcome, where I could have it suggest learning outcome alignments for my assignment after I add in the instructions here. So just want to call out that this, you might not see this in your environment, but just to tell you what it is. So I am going to actually just select save here and align this learning outcome to this assignment. If I wanted to get rid of it, I could just click on this X. And if I want to add another outcome, I can do that here by clicking this add button. So next step is deciding whether or not this assignment is going to be in your gradebook or not. So I can choose to have this ungraded, or I can choose it to add it to the gradebook. So I'm just going to add 100 points, what I want to grade it out of. And then once I select this in gradebook, I'm going to select edit or link to existing. And what I'm going to do is I want to say yes to this. And what's going to happen is it's going to create a new grade item called Intro to Startup Funding in my gradebook, which is the name of that assignment. It's going to create a grade item for it. I'm going to go ahead and select OK. Next up is the due date. So the due date is the soft date in the system. So if learners don't complete by this time, Brightspace is going to flag it as overdue for that date and time. So I'm just going to choose the due date for a week out from today. And you can also select the time here. So I want to just change this to 5 p.m. Next up is the instructions area. So below here, I have at my area where I'm going to add in the instructions for my assignment. So I'm going to make this full screen here so that we can see it. And I want to take a moment first to call out our Brightspace editor. So this is the area that you see all at the top here. And this is the default editor across Brightspace. So you can find the Brightspace editor nearly everywhere you create content in Brightspace, and it allows you to create and insert content across Brightspace. So you can do lots of things with the Brightspace editor. The first thing we can do is apply some text editing features. So for example, I could bold these headings if I'd like, as so. And I can modify the size and the color of my text. So for example, if I wanted to make this instructions even bigger, I could do that and even change the color of it. So let me do that here as well. So I've got my instructions here. I can also do some reformatting. So if I, for example, if I wanted to change these numbers to bullet points, I could do that. I could change them back to numbers if I wanted to. I'm going to head back up here to the top where it says review the PDF. And I want to highlight some really awesome buttons up here, starting off with our insert stuff. So this offers lots of different options for you. You can add in content from across your Brightspace course. You can add in content from your computer and other third-party tools. As you can see, you can add in a video note, for example, if you wanted to provide instructions for your assignment here. And you can add in videos or embed things, embed files from Google Docs, for example, here. I am going to actually select the my computer because I want to drag and drop a PDF here for my students to review. And so I have my PDF on over here, and I'm just going to drag it over. And I'm going to select upload. I'm just going to create a new file here, and I'm going to add in my link text into this area here, which is what my students are going to see, and I want it to open up in a new window. I'm just going to click insert, and there I have my PDF for my students to easily click on there.
Renata, I'm just going to interrupt you briefly about a question we have in the chat asking about our accessibility checker. Would you mind showing that on the screen for us of where that is in our Brightspace editor?
Yes, absolutely. So I was getting to that, but I will show you that where that is right now. Thank you for that awesome question. Our accessibility checker is right up here at the top. And if you're familiar with Brightspace, you might notice that this looks a little bit different than it used to look. So it's been changed. One of our recent updates, we've changed this to a human with a circle around it to make it more clear about what it is. It used to be an eye with a around it. So what I can do here when I'm ready to check if my content is accessible, I can select here and I can see that I have an issue with the color of this text, which I did purposely. So we can actually go ahead and repair that. So what I can do here is, because I've been prompted, I know that I need to choose a different color here. And I can change that. Let's see, if I choose this dark green text, I can see that I've met this here, and I can click save. And then I can go ahead and check this again to see if I have any accessibility issues. So at this point, I have no accessibility issues detected, and I can click OK. So that's what that looks like, and definitely recommend to do this before you are ready to publish any of your content to make sure it's accessible. So thank you for that. Thank you for that call out. The next area I wanted to show was another area in Insert Stuff, and I wanted to embed a video right within my assignments that my learners can watch it to help them with this assignment. So I can go ahead into my Insert Stuff button again, and I can click on this YouTube area. And so from here, if I actually had the URL that I knew I wanted, I could just copy and paste the URL in here, or you can actually search for something. And I have a video that I'm looking for, so I'm just going to search the first couple of words, and my video will show up here. So I can select it and click next. I can see a quick preview, and then I can select insert here. So I can have my video right in line there for my learners. And then the last thing I wanted to point out here is our insert quick link option. And so this allows you to link course materials and other third-party content for students to easily access. So in this scenario, I want to direct my students back to a piece of course content to help them with completing this assignment. So I've clicked on insert quick link, and now I'm going to go to content, and there's a piece of content in my week 3 that I want them to review. And it is my budgeting matters lesson. So here it is here. So when learners select this within the assignment, they can go straight to that content to review it. They don't need to go back and search for the specific content page that I'm looking at. And then finally, up here, we have our insert image option. So you do have the option again to bring in an image. You can drag and drop an image from your computer. And so a great way to be able to add in some additional multimedia here within your assignment. So again, I already did my accessibility check. I'm going to go ahead and check it again. And I have a warning about a heading. So this is really important. It's flagging me that our headings need to be in order. So if a screen reader was reading through this content, it would read it in the correct order. And I'm just so I would have the option to select a different heading here. I can, or I can just click ignore here as well. So I'm going to exit out of that full screen. And I just want to point your attention underneath this our area here with instructions. You do have a couple of other options too. So you can add in files from your computer. You can attach a link to an existing activity, attach a web link, or attach a file from your Google Drive or OneDrive. So those are some additional options for you there at the bottom.
Renata, sorry to interrupt
yes.
you again. Are you able to show how you added that PDF to the instructions again?
Yep. So what I did, let's just get rid of it. So I went into insert stuff and then my computer. So I had this file saved on my computer, and then you can actually drag and drop your file. So you could select upload and find it from your computer, but this is actually a new update that we have, the ability to drag and drop from my computer. So what I did is I just have a folder open on my screen, and I've just dragged and dropped it. I can show you actually what that looks like. So here's my file over here, and then I've just dragged it and dropped it here. And then I've uploaded. It's just prompting me, since I've already uploaded this here, do I want to create a new file? I'm just going to say yes to that. And then I'm just going to add in my link text, which is what the learners are going to see. And I can choose if they open it in a new window or current. So hopefully that helps to see that one again. All right. Let's head over onto the right-hand side to look how we can further customize this assignment. So let's start off with the assignment, availability dates and conditions. So let's start with the start date here. So this is the date that the assignment, becomes available to learners. So since I've made it today, I'm just going to make that today. You can choose how the assignment appears to learners before that start date if you'd like. So if you want them to be able to see it, but they can't access it, then you can choose that. If you want them to be able to actually see it, but not be able to submit anything, you can choose that. Or if you just want it completely hidden, you can decide on that. And then if you'd like to add this availability date to the calendar, that's an option as well. And then this end date here is actually your cutoff date. So this is the date when the assignment will no longer be available to learners. You don't have to set an end date if you don't want to, but I'm going to choose to send an end date. So my due date was the 21st. I'm going to give it another week and set my end date to be on the 25th. And I'm going to choose the same time, 5 p.m. for that end date. Again, you have options to choose. What do you want it to look like for learners after the end date? And here are the similar options. I'm going to actually add that availability date to my calendar because I want them to see that assignment ends on that date. So I can choose that there. In terms of release conditions, you might already be familiar with release conditions. This is a tool that you can find in lots of different areas of Brightspace. And release conditions are a way to release an activity, in this case it's the assignment, based off of something a learner has done or perhaps has not done in the course. And it's a really great way to automate and personalize a course for the learners. So for example, you can create a release condition that only lets learners view the assignment after they've completed a quiz, for example. So if we wanted to do that, we would do add release condition. I'm going to create a new one. And under my condition types here, you can see there's lots of different options here. But I'm going to go to quiz, and I just want them to complete a quiz attempt. So not necessarily a certain score, but I just want them to have completed a quiz. Next, I'm going to actually select the quiz. And because I allowed them 2 attempts, I'm just going to say that they had to do 1 attempt of this quiz to be able to see this assignment. And I'm going to click Create. And then here we have a review again of what our release condition is. Next up is special access. So when it comes to special access, this enables you to make your assignments available only to a select group of users, or you can create some individualized due dates and customize the timing settings for certain learners. So let's go into Manage Special Access. And here's our option 1. So allow a selected user special access to submit outside the normal availability dates for this assignment. So I would like to do that. So I'm going to select Add Users to Special Access. And here I can change those due dates. So I want to extend the due date for this learner. I'm going to extend it to May 30th, let's say. And then end date, I want to make sure that they have perhaps the whole semester to submit this. So I can actually make it to, let's say, the end of June here, for example. And then finally, I'm going to select, okay, which learners now in my class do I want to give that special access to? And for this situation, I'm going to choose Carlos. So all the other students in the class are going to get those default settings that I set when I originally set up the assignment, but Carlos is going to get these specific settings that I just set. And I'm going to click Save. So here we are, and it's just confirming that these are the those modified dates. If we were to do this other option, allow only users with special access to see this folder, this would be an example of an assignment perhaps that was created for example, 1 learner or a group of learners that might be working on an alternative assignment than the rest of the class. So adding learners to this list would only allow them to see the assignment and no one else in the class. So I'm just going to save and close what I have. With Carlos. And then I can see here that I've got 1 user, that's Carlos, that can submit outside those normal availability dates. Let's minimize that and move into submission and completion. So here you'll customize the type of assignment you're creating and what file types you'll accept from students submitting their assignments. So you can have an individual assignment or you can have a group assignment. So you have to have groups set up in your course to be able to set up a group assignment. And basically, if you set up a group assignment, it will create an assignment Dropbox folder for each group to submit to that specific folder. For this example, we're just going to do an individual assignment. And next, I have the option to actually put this assignment into a category like we were looking at the beginning. I was showing you the different categories that I have. I can always change this later too, so I'm just going to leave it in no category. And then I've got my submission type. So there's 4 different options of submission types that you can choose from. The default here is set to file. So if you want your students to actually submit a file for your assignment, this would be the one. And then from there, you can allow, if you want to allow unlimited files for them to be submitted, you can choose that, or if you just want them to submit one, that's an option. You can restrict certain file types if you'd like as well, or just leave it for no restrictions, and then choosing how many submissions are kept. And finally, this notification email. So if you did want to get notified every time that a learner submits something, you could add in an email here. If we didn't want to do a file submission, we could do a text submission. So that allows students to submit their response by typing into the text box with the Brightspace editor. So again, like you saw with the Brightspace editor, they have access to the Insert Stuff button. This might be a good one to use if you wanted students, for example, to respond with a video note. This would be a good option. And then we also have on paper or observed in person. So Brightspace won't expect a file to be submitted, but we can still assess these and keep them all that information in one place, which is what's really great about this on paper and in person. And so then depending on sort of what submission type you choose here, you'll have some other options to decide on. I'm going to keep it as a file submission here. And I'm going to close this up. And finally, we have evaluation and feedback. So you have the option to add a rubric here. So if you have an existing rubric in your course, you can click on Add Existing and all the rubrics in your course will come up. Let's just select this Financing a Business one. We can see what it looks like here. I can see a quick overview of that rubric. And then you've got the annotations tool here. So we have a built-in annotations tool that allows instructors to mark up submissions using fun tools like highlighting, freehand drawing, shapes, and to do different comments and things like that. We are going to cover this in another series in this assessment mini-series. So if you're interested in learning more about the annotation tools, we'll cover that in part 3 of our series. And then anonymous marking. So this option might not show up for you. This is controlled by a configuration variable. So if it's turned on at your institution, it allows instructors to configure assignments to use anonymous learner names. So when it's enabled, instructors only see an anonymized learner name on this assignment. And then finally, this evaluators piece here, this is again something that needs to be, that is controlled by a configuration variable. So you might not see this in your environment, but this is part of our advanced assessment features. And so the number of evaluators who can give feedback in the course is going to be displayed here. Because Regina Davis, who I'm signed in as, she's the only instructor in this course, so she's the only one that can give feedback. But if you had multiple evaluators, you could have different evaluators evaluate a single assignment submission, and then choose which evaluators can publish feedback for the assignment. So once we're done with our setup here and we're happy with our assignment, we can click on Save and Close. And now that we're back on this page, we can see those icons that we talked about before. We set up release conditions, we've added added special access, we've added to the gradebook, and we have one other thing here, which is that it's not visible yet to learners. So let's go ahead and make that visible to our users. And now that we've created this assignment, I want to show you how you can go ahead and actually add this into the content area of your course for students to interact with right in line within your content. And so this is a feature of our new content experience. So I'm going to head over to the content area right now. And I would like to add this into my week 3 module. So if I click here on my week 3, I'm going to select Add Existing because this is something that I've already created. I'm going to select Assignment, And I'm going to see this assignment that I just created, Intro to Startup Funding. And I can go ahead and add it right in line in my content. So as my learner is moving through this course, moving through the content here, they will be able to interact with this assignment right in line. And then you're going to see this really nice completion summary here below as the instructor as well. All right, we're going to stop there for a moment. I'm just going to pause to see if there's any questions for assignments before we move over to the discussions tool. All right, let's pop over to assignments, sorry, to discussions. So discussions are a great tool. It's a dedicated space in Brightspace where learners can interact with their classmates and share their thoughts and unique perspectives on different topics. So they allow learners to collaborate by working together in assigned groups. And they also serve as an area where you as the instructor can dialogue with individual learners or groups, ask questions, and provide descriptive feedback. Discussions can also be used as an assessment tool, and you can align them to standards or outcomes. You can add rubrics and add them to the gradebook as well. And just like you saw in the assignments tool, there's lots of options to customize them and to differentiate to meet the needs of learners. For example, adding in a video note or other multimedia and using release conditions with them as well. So let's jump back into our environment and head over to the discussions tool. Again, if the discussions tool isn't in your navigation bar, you can find it in your course admin. All right, so here we are in our discussions area, and I want to just talk briefly about the sort of the format of the discussions tool within Brightspace. So we have our first level, which is our forum. So forums act as containers to organize our discussion topics. So in this course, I have 3 different forums created: course community, weekly discussions, and ethics and responsibility. I'm actually just going to expand all of these now to show our next level underneath, which is our topic. So the topics are the actual discussion questions. These show up in blue. So we can actually click on these, and this is where you'll provide instructions and where students will post and read messages. So underneath this course community forum, I've got a topic called Welcome to College Life, course questions, study group, recommended resources for business, insights. And if I scroll down, I just want to show you one example is if you have this blue ribbon here, that's showing that to me as the instructor that there's some unread activity in this topic. So I can actually click into that and view that unread information. And then the final level is the posts. So the posts include the threads and replies, and these are really the conversation in action. So I'm just going to go back up to this Welcome to College Life topic. And on the right here, I can see that I've got 2 threads and I've got 3 posts here as well. So I'm going to actually jump into this topic right away. I can click on View Topic. And the first thing that you'll see is a description. So what do learners need to do? And if you actually click on this, you can actually go in and edit that if you needed to update it really quickly, which is really nice. And then if I scroll down, actually, right up here, I just wanted to call it the subscribe button. So this means that if you subscribe to this topic, anytime someone posts to this content topic, I'm going to get notified through the subscription alerts up here. So if you'd like to get notified for anytime someone posts to the content topic, you can do that here. And just down below, we can see these are the threads that have been started by the learner. So there's 2 threads here. Harrison has started a thread and Paulina has started a thread as well. And how you would do that is you would just click Start a New Thread to start your own. So let's jump into Harrison's post here, back to school. And I'm in Harrison's post. I can see that Paulina actually responded to this as well, which is wonderful. And if I want as the instructor to actually reply to a thread, I can do that as well. So I can click on Reply to a Thread, and here I can actually add in my own response to Harrison's discussion posts. So I'm going to make this a bit bigger. So I've got my text here to start. I wanted to call out something that's really great within the discussions tool, which is called the mentions option. So what I can do is, because I'm trying to, connect with my students in the class and connect the students with each other, I've noticed that Harrison has said something about chess club, and another learner in my class, Carlo, also plays chess. Oh, so what I can do here is I can use this at button, and I can actually start typing in my learner's name. And that's funny because I tested this beforehand and it worked, and now he's not coming up here. But sometimes it just takes a moment. So what should happen here is when you use the at button and you start typing a learner's name, the learner's name should come up here, and then they will get a notification that they've been tagged in this post. And then they can actually engage with it. So it's a great way to sort of build community in the class and bring forward connect the learners with each other. So that was the rest of my post. I wanted to tag Carlo and just bring him into that conversation so we could collaborate more with Harrison there. But I'll leave it there. We'll have to look into why that one wasn't working. And I'm just going to click post here as well. But again, you have that Brightspace editor. So even if you wanted to respond with a video note, you have that option to do that here as well. So there's my response. And now that you know sort of how to engage with those discussions, let's start a new discussion. So I'm going to go back to that discussion list, and I'm going to actually, I want to create a new discussion in this specific forum here. So I'm going to go ahead and add a topic. But if you wanted to create a new forum, you would go up here and select new forum. So I'm going to select add topic. And my topic title is Tools That Inspire Smarter Business Thinking. So I just want to create a discussion that encourages students to connect their course concepts to real-world resources like podcasts, books, and articles, and just have a space for them to share some important resources that they've learned about in the class, and then share them with the group. So I just have my little post here. Again, you'll see the same options that we saw in the discussion, the assignment creation option. So outcomes, if you wanted to align this to outcomes, because this is more of a collaborative sharing, I'm not going to align this to outcomes, and I'm also not going to add it to the grade book. But if you did want to, you could, this is the same, looks very similar to what the assignments creation looks like. So you would follow those same workflows. Again, we have the Brightspace editor, so you have the ability to use those formatting options and customize this the way that you see fit. In this situation, I actually want to use that insert image option, so I can do that. And I actually have an image from my computer that I want to drag and drop in. So I've got that, and I'm going to put a picture of this book that I want to share with my class, and I'm going to add in that alternative text here as well for my accessibility. And I'm going to select OK. And I've got my book here, very large. We can make that smaller. Perfect. So I've got that sort of example modeling of that discussion question there for my learners. So now that I'm done creating my sort of discussion topic in my instructions, I can go ahead and select that accessibility checker again. I don't have any accessibility issues detected, so I can click OK. And I'm going to move over here to this area, which again, we saw in the assignments tool. So it's going to be very similar as we looked at before. I'm going to just leave that start date as today, and I'm not going to put an end date because I want my learners to be able to always come in and be able to post this throughout the course. And then you'll also notice here something new that we didn't see in assignments is this group and sections restriction. So for this particular discussion, I'm not going to actually put this for groups, but I'm going to show you a quick example of a group discussion next to show you how that would work. So we'll just skip over there. If you wanted to add release conditions, you could do that as well. But let's look at this post and completion area. This looks a little bit different than we saw before. So this default participation, so of course learners can click on that discussion topic and they can see everyone else's responses and respond. So that's what that one means. If you wanted learners to choose if they want to post anonymously, you can select this one. So instructors will be able to see the learner's name by hovering over the anonymous user. And there is a permission required for that to be enabled for this one. Learners must start a thread before they can view or reply to other threads. So for this particular discussion, wouldn't be applicable to this one, but this would definitely be applicable to maybe some other discussions that you would be using in your courses. And then posts must be approved. So this means that the instructor will have to approve each post before it's actually added to the discussion thread. So it will be marked as moderated to the learner. So the learner will know that it's being moderated. And let's look at this evaluation and feedback option. So again, you can add a rubric here. You can create one from here. You can add an existing one. And then evaluate posts. So this option allow evaluation of individual posts. So this must be added to the gradebook to select this. So if I had added this discussion to the gradebook, I'd be able to click this. Since I haven't, it's not, I can't click it here. And then finally, allow learners to rate posts. So this is a really great feature. There's a couple of options here. If you choose the 5-star rating, the learner can give a thread a 1 to 5-star review. You can allow learners to upvote or downvote, or you can allow them to just upvote. I'm going to select this one. This one's most inclusive, I think. So I'm going to select that upvote. So if someone really liked someone else's post or, book or podcast or article that they shared, they can upvote that. And then once I'm done here, I can select Save and Close. And here I can see that here is my new discussion topic that I've created on that is underneath my forum course community. So really quickly, I just want to show you the group discussion. So I'm just going to go down to the bottom here. I have another discussion forum called Ethics and Responsibility. And for this, I really want to have sort of a variety of topics around ethics for my students to discuss in groups. So I'm going to go into this topic here and select Edit Topic. I've already got all my information in here, but to be able to set them up in groups, I'm going to go to this group and section restrictions and click on Manage, this Manage Restrictions option. And so I've got two options here. I've got Restrict Topic, so that means that only learners in the groups that you select will see the topic and all of its threads. Or you can restrict the topic and separate the threads. So learners in the selected groups can view the topic, but they'll only see the threads from their specific group. So in this case, I only have one set of groups in my course that's called ethics groups. So this is the only option that I have here, but you could choose if you wanted which group to see which thread. So in this case, only I've got sort of 3 members in each groups, and if I had different categories of groups, they would show up here. But I'm just going to click Add, and then we can see that this is visible to all groups in the ethics groups, and then the threads are separated by group. So if group 1 is only going to see the posts from their own group, so that's what that means. All right, so just like we did for the assignment, we can also add in discussions in line into content. So I'm going to show you that as well. So let's click Save and Close. And I'll go back into my content area. And let's add the first discussion that we made into content, not the group discussion, but the first one. So if I go into this week 1, and I'm going to go into our course community here, and I'd like to add existing because I've already created it. This time I'm going to select discussion. And I made it under course community. I forgot for a second. There we go. Tools that inspire smarter business thinking. Here we go. And then I have that discussion right in line here within my content area. All right. The last thing I want to touch upon very briefly is our inline display of accessible activities. So that's just sort of what I just showed. It's available in our new content experience, and it allows instructors and learners to view and interact with assignments, quizzes, and discussions, and LTI links directly within content. And so this does need to be enabled in your environment. So if you don't see this in your environment, it needs to be configured, so not to worry. But this improvement really, really streamlines the teaching and learning experience. So I'm going to show you what this looks like, again, over here in our environment. So under this course community folder here, let's just go over to this week one discussion. So this is a discussion that's already been, this is being funny here. This is a discussion that's learners have already engaged with. And again, I'm looking from the instructor view. So now if I go down, I get this really clear completion summary. I can see that Faith, Paulina, and Darnell, I've graded all of theirs and I've published all of their evaluations. But Harrison and Carlos, they have not I have not yet evaluated them. So right from this page, I can actually go straight into that evaluation and evaluate those learners, or I can go to evaluate all of them at once. So this completion summary is a really great hub to really monitor that learner progress on the activity so they can provide support and intervention when needed. And then from up here, you can actually go in to edit the activity if you needed to. So this is a really clear workflow for learners and the instructors as well. And I want to show you what this looks like for a discussion. So let's jump into week 2 and go into this assignment proposal area. So in this situation, I've actually got a document that I've attached, and I also have a rubric that I've attached for the learner. So I can get a nice overview of what those activity content and those instructions are. And then if I go down to my completion summary again, I can see that we've got that same consistent look. This is the, we've got special access for Carlos, so I can get an overview of that. And then again, I can see those marks, and I've got something that's been unread here as well, an unopened file here from Darnell. So I can go ahead and go to that evaluation straight from here. I want to take a moment to show you what this looks like from the student perspective. And you're going to notice some some similarities. So let's just hop over, and I want to show you, I'm logged in as Faith now. And I'm just going to refresh my page. So let's look at this week 1 discussion that Faith has already submitted. So you'll notice that the activity content, this portion at the top, this is the exact same for Faith than it was for the instructor. So they have a really consistent view of those instructions. And then down below, instead of that completion summary, Faith has my work area. So in this case, she's already submitted. She's able to see her grade. She's able to see her actual discussion and what she did here and any other additional feedback. So this is really clear to her how she's done in that discussion. And then I want to show you an example of something that she hasn't submitted yet and how easy it is for the learner to submit something that they haven't done yet. So let's hop over to this week 3 area and this intro to startup funding assignment that we just created. So again, we can see it right at the top, Faith, she hasn't submitted. Again, we've got those instructions that we created. We have the rubric that we've aligned. And then at the bottom, this time, she's got the option to actually submit her assignment. So I actually have a file, and I'm going to drag and drop that file from Faith. Let's just grab that. And I'm going to drag that file, just a Word document, and here it is. And I'm able to, as Faith, just go ahead and submit that from here. So she gets that confirmation that she's successfully submitted that. And then this has now changed at the top. She knows that she's submitted, and she's just waiting on that evaluation from her instructor now. So really streamlined and easy process for the learner to submit their work and see their feedback, and also for the instructor to check in on where learners are at with regards to their submissions and their participation in their assessment activities. All right. I'm going to jump back over to our slide deck. And I know we've gone a little bit over, so I apologize. We'll have some time for questions. I just want to run through really quickly a couple of things. Our Champions program is an opportunity to join us and let us recognize you for being a champion of Brightspace. So you can sign up and win some cool perks and things like that when you're a champion. Thanks, Heather, for putting the link in the chat there for the Champions program. Again, our higher education faculty community group, we invite you to join us there as well. And please join us for our upcoming sessions. So we've got quizzes next in June, and then assessment and feedback and evaluation coming up in the next couple of months. If you would like to register for those, we also have a link to bring you right to the registration page. To register for those, you can register all at once, which is great. And then now we'll just open it up to discussion and questions. We do have a couple of discussion questions here. Would love to learn about how you're encouraging participation of students in discussions, any certain themes or topics that you found engaging, or even just curious to learn about something that you learned today that you want to try. So we'll open it up from here. If you do want to if you want to put your hand up, we can unmute you to ask your question or share, or you can feel free to share in the chat as well. So we'll just open it up for you. See, Heather's done a really good job answering all the questions in the Q&A. Thank you. I see a note here. New student and instructor experience that you mentioned need to be turned on. So if you're referring to the new content experience, yes, that needs to be configured. The content experience are controlled by configuration variables. So the new content experience can be turned on for just some courses, or it can be turned on for all the courses in your organization. So you do have options there if you'd like to try out the new content experience if you're using the classic experience right now. But yes, that does need to be configured by your Brightspace administrator. Welcome. Okay, Andre, I see a note in the Q&A. I'd be interested to learn about audio visual tools and discussions as an alternative to VoiceThread. So in terms of what you can do for audio and visual tools, we talked about the video note tool. You can also add in like actual videos if you've got them, if you can bring in videos from YouTube, or if you have videos even that you've created within your media library. But perhaps if you'd like to, we can unmute you and you could maybe share a little bit more about if those tools don't meet the need for what you're looking to do. Let me just.
Yeah, yes. Thank you so much, and thank you for answering all the questions. And uh, I'm very impressed with the presentation because I'm doing very similar presentations at Portland Community College on like on ongoing basis, assignments, discussions, so all the tools for D2L. But I'm impressed how you packed so much information in one session. I usually running out of 1 hour time just doing assignments because that is a lot of things, but we going into a little bit more detail. So yeah, so we're using VoiceThread, and VoiceThread is a great tool, but sometimes it's confusing to instructors and students to use, and folks are looking for alternative alternative ways to create this interactive discussions between students. So discussions, just D2L discussion, that tool that you just showed, quite often getting mentioned. And I was just thinking that you might have some extra bells and whistle into that audio video tools, besides just using the video note, if there's anything you might recommend.
And so, thank you. Do you mean like any tools outside of Brightspace that could
No,
be?
no, opposite. Like what, like so everything that like any shortcuts or like the sort of easier workflows. Because video notes is a good tool, but in at least in our environment, that creates a attached video file that you have to open, like it opens in a different window, and it's like I'm finding actually insert stuff, video notes, way better than using that attachment, because you can see things right inside of the HTML editor.
Right. Yes, I think that that's a great call out about the video note, is that it's right embedded in line wherever you want it to be. And even further, with the media library, any video notes or audio notes that you create is all stored within your media library. So you can actually go, and when we talked about insert stuff, not only can you create that video note right away, but if you had something that you already created, you could embed that right within the discussion or wherever that you find the Brightspace editor. You could pull in from your media library to add that video in, or it could even be an audio note too if they didn't want to do like if they didn't want to show video. And also within the media library, you can bring in assets, like say you already had videos that you created using VoiceThread or whatever other tools that you used. You can actually bring those into the media library. So I think that's a really neat feature, because lots of people have lots of different tools that they're using. You can actually bring them all within Brightspace. Then they're sitting in one spot for you to distribute within your course and among all your courses, because the media library isn't just for one course, and it stays with the instructor year over year too. So that might be.
Can you show really quick how to incorporate a media library asset to the discussion?
Yep.
Because that's one of the things about media, just the video notes, that they disappear in 6 months, right? So if the instructor wants to use something without using Kaltura or something like my media thing, that might be useful.
So if you just wanted to add in something from media library here, for example, insert stuff and then media library.
Okay.
And then you could search. I think I had something called accessibility here. So I could just go ahead and insert that. and then it's embedded. So it's the same workflow wherever you see the Brightspace editor, whether you're responding to a discussion post, creating one, you'll just select insert stuff and you'll have that option to add in from media library. And then again, with this, you've got the auto-generated, the closed captions as well. So you'll be able to have that for learners as well, which will detect the language that you're speaking in. Does that help?
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, yeah, I should start using more of media library, I guess.
Awesome. Well, thanks for your questions. I know we're over time. I'm just going to put this QR code up really quickly. If anyone would like to share any feedback on the session, we'd really appreciate it. Helps us to improve these and make these more valuable for you going forward. So appreciate those that are still with us. And thank you as well, Heather, for putting that link in the chat as well if you'd prefer to do it on your device. So I'll leave that up for another minute, but really appreciate you joining us, and we hope that we see you at one of our next sessions. Thank you.